Welcome everyone. Welcome to yet another DCLK webinar, Shattering Your Inner Glass Ceiling. This glass ceiling has been spoken about quite widely. Today is more to focus on what we can do to feel we're worthy, which is the first step towards reaching our full potential. A little bit about Diversity Collective Lanka. Diversity Collective is all about empowering women, especially in the tech space, which has quite a disparity, which we are improving, but quite slowly. In our attempt to fast track this towards parity in general, but our focus right now is especially in the tech industry. We have a few different things that we focus on. So there are 4 pillars that we tend to focus on to get the visibility as well as the conversation going. In the school area, when we say school, primary, secondary, where we think it's a bit of a long game, but that's kind of where the learning and the mindset starts, the change actually starts. So we are working with Ministry of Education, we're working with the private schools also, etc., to get the conversation going, to get more industry mentors talking about careers, talking about the tech industry, talking about the opportunities to have a career in this industry. Higher education is just as important because a lot of hiring at the moment happens from higher education, which is not ideal, which is something also we're trying to change. So there, that also becomes a stronger conversation because we even have academia from the universities on the board of DCLK. Talking about it in the companies is one of the main areas if we're going to make any sort of quick changes. Diversity, inclusion, equity is a conversation that's beginning to happen a little bit more than maybe 2 years ago, which I personally am excited about. And we get involved from talking to individuals who are trying to make changes in the company to leadership. We're also now introducing a corporate membership to try and fast track that conversation. The last but not least is the pillar on entrepreneurship. I'm sure everybody's heard a lot about women entrepreneurship right now. As much as there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of incentives. It's not moving as much. In general, I think entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka needs a bit of a boost. And our job in DCLK is to try and improve that and give a little bit more visibility and support and encouragement to the women, whether it be tech startups or general startups, and to use technology better. So that's a snippet about DCLK. Let me stop there and move on to our guest today. I'm going to let the video go for a second, and then we'll start the intro. Natalie, it's not playing. Do you want me to play? Mm-hmm. I'm not hearing the sound, but I don't think there's a narrative. It's just background music, right? So as you can see, this is a quick snippet, quick intro to Senela Jayasuriya, who's joining us today. We're really excited to have you, Senela, because one, I think you're going to bring a really good perspective on the different pivots you've made through your journey. And more importantly, we're really excited about all that you have achieved, the impact, and we'd really love to dive into that a little bit more to try and understand how you have achieved what you've achieved, but more, as importantly, some of the concerns, issues that we as women face, which I think I highlighted in the poster. Welcome, Senela, and would you like to share a little bit more about this journey in form of an intro. I'm happy to ask questions, but I'd like you to maybe start by sharing a little bit about yourself and especially about this final slide, the presidential magazine.
Thank you so much, Bani. Absolute honor to be here. Thank you for your wonderful invitation, and kudos to DCLK for the wonderful work. Honored to be here on your platform. So good evening, everyone. You know, it's so interesting because when you put your heart there out into the universe, and just going directly into the last slide, and I'm going to reverse engineer and start with my beginning, but coming to the last slide, it's really interesting how it happened, because they went through a selection panel of 20 global women. And I was told from the person who had shortlisted my name, and they had gone through a vetting process. And then the member on the board, who's Australian, in Australia, she contacted me and said, Senela, we want to feature you on the cover of another magazine in Australia. I said, all right, this is tremendous, because she and I had done some work together as well. And because a lot of my vision from get-go has been very consistent, I was very clear. I took action all towards that whole global impact, global vision sort of a thing. And then I was working with all these global partners. And then long story short, she connected me to the US Presidential Service Center. And then I went through a vetting process there, as you can imagine. And ultimately, I got involved with them as a delegate, and still a delegate attached to the US Presidential Service Center as well, representing Sri Lanka. And I do a lot of work in Africa as well, so that got picked up. And my article got published on page 11, which is just such a tremendous feat. Page 11. So it was just such an incredible journey, yet again, to remind myself that next time I face self-sabotage and imposter syndrome, which I'm sure I'm going to after this session maybe, is to say, remind myself, no, Senela, all the work you put in, it does get deposited in the universe. It doesn't dissipate, it gets deposited. And I think that's a wonderful, the moral behind that, if at all, would be, don't stop, keep trying and keep moving. So just to go back a little bit about my journey thus far, from the point of corporate transition into what I do today, Bani, and I want to really go heart to heart today in this beautiful fireside kind of forum that you've orchestrated for us. Thank you for holding the space. So Bani, I've been working in the training, coaching, talent development space for over 15 years now. I also worked in marketing and brands in a Fortune 100 company. I was the country head for a tech company as well. First female hire in the company. Also had a bunch of tech savvy experts with more experience in the field than I did, because I crossed over from a completely different industry, but they recruited me for my management capability, not for my field expertise. So it was a lot of that typical glass ceiling of, oh my goodness, how do I can't force the admiration of my team and respect of my team, but how do I really understand the corporate cultural nuances to really get down to their level and embrace them one-on-one, so that they will accept me, and we build on trust and go from there. So that was really where my whole mentoring, coaching kind of thing really flourished. I learned to adapt, I learned to innovate myself, and I learned to withdraw some characteristics in me that I felt was not serving me. I learned to deposit the attitudes, beliefs, and thoughts that I knew I needed in order to become who I needed to be and go to where I felt I deserved. So I kept pivoting from my multinational job to this international company as country head. These were very significant pivots for me in my life and my career. And I'm not going to go into the crying in the bathroom and then just being mad at myself for so many fails and failed attempts and then rejection and all of that, right? We all have our stories. I won't go too in depth into that right now. But in 2007, Bani, I was drawing a very big salary, had a flashy car, great corporate perks, but man, I felt so empty. I can't tell you how empty I felt. I couldn't look in the mirror, and I asked myself, why do I feel this empty if everything at a surface level seemed to be working out so well? I went into some spiritual deep dive. I felt something was missing. My knees hit the floor by my bedside. I was praying for 6 months because I'm a very purpose-driven person. And I think for me, I had a massive identity crisis. Though I was successful doing all these jobs because I was a high achiever because I wanted validation and approval from my parents. So that's a different scenario. And I know a lot of people can relate to that culturally in our system. But long story short, I was having a conversation with God for 6 months. And I was mad saying, God, I want to make myself more purposeful than making products so successful. I want to cross over from product to people. I want to do something for people. Tell me what that is. And then boom, after 6 months, I got a very clear vision. And how that happened was a very interesting story for another forum. But 1 million women, that I must empower 1 million women for leadership globally, for more autonomy, and to learn to give themselves the permission that they think they need in order to succeed. And I'm talking in hindsight, this was the permission I didn't give myself. So really my journey with Women Empower Global, I can honestly, in a very vulnerable, candid manner say, it has also shaped me and helped me invent myself into the woman I am today so that I can support the global ecosystem it went on to create. And I'll just stop with this last point. What I mean by giving women the permission is the type of hurdles I had to go through to give myself permission. I said, Senela, I looked in the mirror and I said, Senela, I give you the permission to want to feel like you matter. Senela, I give you the permission to have a dream, to set a goal and go after it. Senela, I give you the permission to take care of others, but not at the expense of yourself, your health, your choices. And finally, Senela, I give you the permission to take back your power and enable others, men and women, to discover theirs and use it to benefit self, the community, for a higher serving purpose. 2018, January, launched Women Empowered Global at the Women's Economic Forum. 3.5 years fast forward that, we scaled dynamically with a global team across 6 continents. I work with over 37 global partners worldwide. We have a network reach globally, direct members 4,000 plus across 50 countries, network reach 10,000 plus ecosystem. So it's a lot of hard work. And if someone says, Senela, I want to speak at the stages you do, I turn around and I say, are you willing to make the sacrifices and put the hard work? Is it your dream? Be authentic, be true to it. If it is, go after it and give yourself the permission to. Bani, back to you.
Thank you. So I think another aspect I want to try and bring out today in today's conversation is very much the fact that this is a conversation between 2 people, I'm going to say from 2 generations, purely because I think sometimes we all, like you mentioned, there are expectations we're trying to run behind, which are not necessarily ours. And there is no one right answer. You very clearly said you're very ambitious, you are driven, you are purpose-oriented, and that's great. And the self-reflection you've gone through actually helps you understand that that's what drives you, that's what makes you happy. I'm going to say I'm slightly different, and I think a lot of women out there are going to have different versions of themselves. And I think the part I want to bring out in this conversation is that that's okay. You know, we all have our different ways of feeling worthy, but the important fact is that we find that way to make ourselves worthy, because most of the times what I'm seeing is we all kind of stop the race or step off the race halfway, not because we want to, because we think that's what's expected of us. And that's kind of the beautiful side of what you just mentioned. You were running the race for other people, then you decided, enough, I'm going to run it for yourself. And unapologetically, you decided the way you were going to run. And I think that's the lesson worth hearing, worth taking away from here. I would say in comparison, I was never that ambitious, but whatever I did really the best I could. And, that kind of, many things fell. I'm going to say I was lucky, but that's again another thing that we fall trapped into, right? We talk about luck when it's actually hard work. So that to me is an important aspect, and thank you for bringing that up, Senela. What I would like to move on to, and audience, if you all have any questions, feel free to type it in. I'm going to try and keep the flow, but we'll definitely take it all in through this the hour, or if not at the end for sure. I'd like Senela to get your opinion and a little bit of conversation around the concept of your whole self, which is a topic I think even in companies we're beginning to talk about. Could you kind of shed some light on your opinion on that, and also your perspective on what you're seeing in Sri Lanka?
Absolutely. That whole concept about whole self. The idea, if we were to just define it among us, the 12 people in this room, it would be interesting to find out how each of us define that concept. So I think even the idea of how we approach and relate to the concept of whole self is going to differ. And that's really okay. It's not about punishment. It's about self-acceptance and authenticity and awareness and navigating that. So I think when you talk about whole self, my definition would be bringing all of me into the table, whether it's a decision-making table, the boardroom, or whether I'm just having a conversation with a peer, or whether I'm coaching one of my team members, whatever it is, or speaking to a stakeholder, bringing my whole self, bringing it on, bringing me on, bringing my heart, bringing my authenticity, bringing my aura. A lot of women like to talk about executive presence because it's so key when you talk about succession and all of that. That's all well and good. But the interesting thing about whole self is, on the one side, I feel like there's this whole narrative about, can I give myself the permission to bring myself to work as I am? Do I have to dress a certain way, look a certain way, talk a certain way, walk a certain way? Does my posture have to be 90 degrees straight? Does my smile have to be a certain way? Don't smile too much. Deep down your tone when you speak at boardrooms a little lower, people will respect you more. So all these nuances governed by, and then Sheryl Sandberg, there's a brilliant chapter about leaning in and breaking down this stereotype, right? But coming back to whole self, conceptually, I would say being fearless about loving yourself and not discounting yourself because you give more respect to what others expect of you than what you expect of yourself. To me, that would be an internalized definition of bringing my whole self. And Barney, I must confess, the bigger part of my life was not being this fearless. This wasn't me. The bigger part of myself was looking in the mirror and running away from it. Walking into a conference room, running away from it. So that is just one narrative of the bringing the whole self, women, and then facing the mirror and saying, this is me, and owning that power. I've seen it actually pays off, especially as I kept escalating my leadership my journey. Owning my power is it automatically, that mindset and the psychology of bringing me to the table changes the entire environment in that moment. But for me, what's really helped is the conversation I would have with myself, the self-talk. Because imposter syndrome is a huge conversation if we talk about bringing whole self, imposter syndrome. Exactly. How do we face that? Now, on the other side, the concept and definition, how does an organization define embracing people bringing their whole self? Because it has to work both ways. Is it, printed in a very expensive placard, framed in a very expensive signature frame, placed in a very expensive boardroom, but nobody really understands what whole self really means inside an organization. So I think that's where, Barney, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, really creating that space across the board for employees to really feel a sense of belongingness, that they're not going to be marginalized, they're not going to be discriminated if they raise their hand and share opinion. And there is such a thing as positive conflict, because this whole thing about cancel culture, herd mentality, and goodness, don't get me started culturally about how expert we are as a culture to follow the herd. Oh, the management team said this, it must be so. Don't challenge status quo. So these are the two scenarios when we talk about bringing whole self.
So, and I hear you and I agree with you, but I think the point I also want to kind of impress here is the fact that it is an element of risk. There is a risk, like you said, because it might be more a buzzword right now in the corporates than what we all believe it needs to be, and that there is research that shows that inclusion does pay off even financially. But the important thing I think we all have to be aware, especially, I mean, I'm going to say as individuals, but as women as well, is if we do want to be that authentic and we do want to bring our whole self, there is an element of risk, and you do need to be able to navigate through that risk. And I guess my encouragement here is to take those risks. You know, make it calculated, but you do have to, you cannot stay in the safe space if you want to be achieving something more, or forget even achievement if you want to be happy, if you want to be satisfied. So it is that balance, and that kind of segues well into one of the other topics of the fact that the taking a risk and how good or not good we are at taking those risks. I mean, listening to you, you've kind of covered both sides of the coin. You have covered, you know, living to fit the mold, and then you've woken up from that. Just if you could maybe talk about a few things that you could maybe help people who are sort of in that situation that you were in, was it 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago? You know, so you did talk about prayer. I don't pray, but self-reflection, there are different things you can do. Any other angles that you want to share a little bit?
Absolutely.
To
Absolutely.
kind of make us sit up?
So one thing I've understood is, I'll talk about the A's very quickly. There are A's. I'll give it to you. The first thing of transforming yourself is having a sense of self-awareness. So that's something I really did. First step, get clarity. Remove the fog, the smoky lens. That's not going to get you anywhere. You want to cross the bridge. If you can't see 12 feet ahead of you or 1 foot ahead of you, you're going to stumble, honey. So the first thing I literally did was spend time, dedicate time. I was desperate. I mean, obviously I didn't have anything else besides reflecting and saying, Senela, get a sense of self-awareness. So that would be my first step, awareness, work on awareness, because that is your transformation journey. It begins there. So number one, awareness. I prayed to get that inner clarity. I journaled. They say journaling does a lot of things to support you to remove that clog and that doubt. And be mindful about ruminating. If you catch yourself ruminating, talking to yourself in cycles, if you're overcritical, make sure to check in with yourself, speak to a confidant, and get out of yourself. Detach yourself from the situation, because you're not going to think clear and gain clarity if you're ruminating. Ruminating is talking about the same thing. Oh, this happened, going over and over in circles. So be mindful about that. So number one, get awareness. Number two, I checked my attitude. I did a massive attitude check. All right, Senela, what are the things that you are right now that you stand behind and you stand for that are not serving you, that are holding you back? What's causing you to feel empty? What makes you feel so out of line? not aligned with yourself. So I went through checking my attitudes and beliefs. And, I'm speaking to an audience that shares the kind of similar upbringing that I imagine I faced to do with culture, right? Social norms and limiting narratives for women in general in Sri Lanka. Addressing some of that, how much of what I feel right now, the struggle is me saying yes to the generational patterns of thinking. Oh yes, I can't do this because of this. I can't do that because of this. So really unpacking myself, that is what I mean by doing an attitude check on your beliefs, your value system, and your thoughts about who you are as a person. Number 3, after I gained all this insight and clarity, soul searching, prayer, journaling, self-talk, looking at my limiting narratives and self-talk, that kind of thing, I checked my attitudes and beliefs. And then I moved into coming out with a robust action plan. Because if you don't take all this amazing awareness and this newfound clarity, and if you don't package it into something, guess what happens? You haven't fully learned a lesson. You haven't absorbed what you're meant to do. So that was really what I did. I took all of this in 6 months and I packaged it into a plan. And that plan, the next step, Vani, final step, is take action. I took that plan, my tears, the rejections I felt, all of that went into the plan. I took my struggle. How can I take my struggle and make something out of it? I don't want to take my struggles in life and just lose sight of it and it's in vain. No, I want to use it. Fear is my friend. That's another thing I did. I learned to say fear is my friend. Fear will not attack me. I will face fear, but more than fear, I will focus on courage. So that's the part about the attitude I said, the narratives, how you the self-talk part of it. So awareness, start there, do an attitude check, do an action plan, finally, take action. So those are the 4 A steps that I took on my journey, Vani. And like you said, it's not about the 5th A is ambition. I can, put it in there, but what is ambition? Give your definition of ambition. But here's the thing, be unapologetic and stick to it. Is it about taking a sabbatical? Is it about saying, no, I want to rest, I don't want to work? Well, whatever it is, do it. Believe in it and defend it. Because if you don't defend it, nobody else is going to defend it for you. So I will leave that there.
Thank you. I'm going to add one more. I'm just trying to understand, once you started that journey, was there others that you reached out to get advice, sounding board, coaching, support, and how did that fit in? And how did you go about that? Because I think the reason I'd like you to take a little time talking about that also is because I find a lot of us, one, don't ask for help, are a little uncomfortable and shy to reach out to somebody, like a cold call to, you admire that person, but no, I have no right to reach out to that person and try and see whether that person can help me, whether it be for a personal, supportive encouragement, or whether it be because I need something and I'm uncomfortable to ask. How does that fit in?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pani. So in my process of reinventing myself, it was really about focusing on these 4 points. And believe me, because I had such a wonderful corporate career, nobody in my immediate family, nobody, I'm not even kidding, not even my pets at home, okay, they didn't approve. And to date, just 2 years ago, my parents came around and said, they had seen me in some international forum and some magazine, something that said, is that you? They still don't know what I do. It's hilarious. My husband, he doesn't know what I do. I'm being very vulnerable. I'm being absolutely honest with you. The people I love, my siblings, don't embrace what I do, not fully. Some of them might laugh at me. Senela, what, you left corporate career to do this? Really? But the people I impact they know what I'm doing because they feel the results, they feel the value. So Barney, to answer your question, ideal scenario, if you have a confidant, if you have a supportive partner, if you have a best friend, if you have a sounding board, I would say go all out. Because what I am today is because when I grew my financial resources, when I grew my my understanding and knowledge, I realized the value of investing in a coach, of finding a mentor, of speaking to somebody like that. But in pursuit of these 4 checkpoints I gave you in that 6-month vacuum, I had nobody. I had nobody. And to some of you watching today, that might be your case as well. You might have friends who you can't really approach because you put hurdles on your own mind. Oh, what will she think of me? What will he think of me? It might happen and you feel absolutely alone. What do you do then? So ideal scenario is, I just want to mention this as well, Barney. When I went through and crossed over to the other side, when I became more assertive, I started investing in very high-end certification programs, very high-end global master classes, working with high-end coaches in the world. I did all of that. I invested time, resources, money. But here's the thing. Because I do the work I do globally, I do have certain data points and comparisons, and I will say something. I've observed, not to generalize, but in Sri Lanka, I've observed where when people think about investing in a coaching program, they think not twice, Barney, they think 5 times. But if they think about investing in a keratin hair treatment, they won't think about it for more than 4 hours. What is this dilemma? It's really interesting. It goes to show what are we as a society placing priority to? Helping myself? Going after a coach? What's that going to give me? Versus the 20,000 rupee keratin treatment. Oh, the neighbors will see me. Or next time I go to a meeting, people will see me, I'm more confident. No, this is the mask we carry. This is the mask. It doesn't last, friends. Go deeper. Something that I also inculcated was the psychology behind winning. And that's what I do today in my coaching globally, is the psychology behind winning. And now, Barney, I've reached a mantle in my life. I want to read out to you quickly my mantras. Can I quickly read out to you some of the mantras that I...
Yes.
These are the mantras that it took me years in the making to really face and be comfortable with. Mantra number 1. There is no magic. A lot of people say, Senela, what's the formula? It's a winning psychology, but guess what? There's no magic. It's a lot of hard work. If I work for success, success will work for me. The amount of hours I've sacrificed time with my child, the amount of hours I sacrificed, to get into the position I am today, to pivot, it takes sacrifice, it takes money, it takes courage. There's no magic. Number 1, it's hard work. Number 2, I am not a victim. The minute we go into anything, oh, I'm a woman, I'm a victim, or this or that, I'm a man, I'm a victim, whatever. You think you're a victim? Barney, I used to think like that. If my husband didn't speak to me, he misunderstood me, he doesn't appreciate me, I'm just now, also generalizing, I'd be like, I'm a victim. I feel like he doesn't relate to me, or the society doesn't understand me. I'm a victim, or I'm a loner. This victim mentality, if something happens, somebody hurts me, rejects me, this happens. This is research. This is not me pulling out some narrative from the air. This victim mentality is not going to take you forward. It's going to, in fact, prevent you from realizing that you need to transform yourself. And a lot of the times you want to transform your environment. But I think it was Mahatma Gandhi that said something like, the place to start is yourself. Look inward. And that's exactly what I did. And number 3, change my energy, change my outcome. What is the energy and your aura when you walk into a meeting, when you pick up the phone to speak to a stakeholder, when you put dinner on the table? What is your energy? Energy behind money, the mindset behind earning. Do you give yourself permission to earn? Or have you put yourself a ceiling on that? I'm speaking to women in the audience, particularly. How assertive are you with your potential for income? Number 4, not how can this happen to me? But what can I do to change this? Bani, literally, I have these mantras on my Google Keep on my phone, right? Then number 5, break the cycle, reinvent myself. It starts with me again. And finally, thoughts are not things. Don't give every thought your power. Choose your thoughts wisely. I want to quickly tell you a statistic here, Bani, I came across. It's crazy. It says a study had suggested on average, a human being thinks about 12,000 thoughts, right? 12,000 to about 50,000. The range is huge. But of those thoughts we think every day, 80% of those thoughts tend to be negative. 80% of our thoughts are on autopilot. Pessimist. Think about it. Get this. 95% of those thoughts are repetitive thoughts. Can you believe that? 80% of the thoughts we think on average tend to be negative, and 95% are repetitive negative thoughts. Isn't that crazy?
Over and over again.
Crazy. 80% of our thoughts on average tend to be negative every day. And 95% of those thoughts on autopilot are repetitive. So imagine the negative self-talk, the barrage of things that we love and accommodate and have tea with every day, right? And there was another research, I'll end with this. It suggests that 85% of what we even worry about ends up not even happening. So we're ruminating, oh, this happened, so this is going to happen, so this is going to happen. It's a negative. So that's what I talk about, the power of the psychology of winning. I do a lot of work around that as well, Bani. So this is really what helped me. And it, you know, I really think, Bani, success is a moving target. And I love Michelle Obama's book. Nobody on earth can stand and say, oh, this is where I arrived. I'm totally content with my development, and there's no more room for me to become. No, success is a moving target. We are forever evolving. We are forever becoming. We are forever learning. And if I'm not challenging myself and learning from you and from each other, I don't want it. It's not life. Even this conversation, Bani, I'm learning. I'm learning from you, learning from the audience. I'm growing and challenging. So that's really the beauty of growth in life. And just, you know, love yourself. Because Bani, remember when we had our pre-chat, I said my philosophy of life, because my journey really is, you know, you talk from rag to riches. In my case, it was from running away from public speaking to now conquering stages where you have audience from across, you know, over 50, 100, you know, countries, like large stages I share, you know, so that is typically my journey. But one thing I would say is the separation between people who settle and people who want to succeed is that winning psychology. It's not about having the confidence, but it's about having the courage. That's really what I'd like to say.
I thank you, Senela. And I think a lot of what you said, I think two things stick in my head. One is the fact that as much as you have all of this, whether it be ideas, people around you, negative or positive, becomes irrelevant if you look within first. And obviously, like you said, that's a journey. It's effort every day, staying positive, keeping resilient. So it is not something that you can say is done. It's constant. But I guess the other part of it is also that criticism will come. It doesn't have to be negative as long as you take it in the right perspective. So growth mindset is something that, you know, something that I kind of have been looking into and trying very hard to bring it into the education space. And I think that is an aspect that we could all learn, live by, and then it just becomes, you know, everything is growth, everything is learning, everything is moving forward. Whether it be you fall flat on your face or whether you have loss, whether you actually people, you know, even stab you in the back, all of that is everyday stuff we have, right? But if you let all of that put you down or let you, as you say, let yourself play the victim, you do become the victim, you do become the loser. So it's so I think what I keep hearing, and I think I want to emphasize, is you can have help, you can have support, you can have encouraging friends, but all of that does not replace your developing your inner strength, developing your inner confidence. So thank you. And I know, and you say it so passionately, I'm hoping the whole audience will realize that that is the part that you can't, replace with anything. And how you find it is different. So, which is great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me switch to one other topic, which is actually, I think it's a phrase I put in the poster as well, because I read it and it stuck. Stand in the sun. What I understood about that phrase was the fact that, one, you have to take the risk, you have to own it, you have to move away from the shadows, step into the limelight. And I know that's a hard one for a lot of us. I'm going to say hard for me. It has been hard for me as well. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that journey for you. And then I think I'm going to try and give a different perspective also. The spotlight. I know you said it was hard, but how do we justify the spotlight? Because a lot of us push others forward, wait for a more perfect time, a little risk averse. Talk me through that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, I'll start with the Maya Angelou quote. I love Maya.
Sorry,
yes, Pani, can you hear me?
Sorry, Senela, we just have a quick question. One wants to just repeat those 5 points again. I just thought it might work if you do that now.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So very quickly, these are my mantras on my Google Keep, and I look at this every morning. First one is, there is no magic. There is a lot of hard work, right? So my quote is, what I say is, I publish this: if I work for success, success will work for me. So tell yourself, if you work for success, success will work for you. There's no magic. It's hard work. Number 2, I am not a victim. Don't expect a knight in shining armor to come rescue you. Don't expect anyone, your best friend, to take you out of your pit. No, you have to be your helper. You are not a victim. Number 3, change my energy, change my outcome. Number 4, not how can this happen to me, but what can I do to change this? Number 5, break the cycle, reinvent myself. What do I stand for? What do I stand behind? So break the cycle and reinvent myself. Stop ruminating. Stop habits that are holding you back. Try to inculcate successful habits that will move you forward. To break the cycle, I know for me, it used to be escapism. The minute I have confrontation with anybody I love or with anything, I run away. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to face it. I'm going for a walk. Let's talk about it later. Confrontation. I didn't know how to deal with it. But then I trained myself, developed awareness, came with a strategy. I face it. I go through it. I pivot. I embrace the fear. And embracing the fear has really helped me. Finally, thoughts are not things. Don't give thoughts your power. Choose them wisely before you act. Thoughts are not things. Don't give thoughts your power. Choose them wisely before you act. So those are the 5 points. So Pani, coming back to your question, I want to start with a Maya Angelou quote. She said, it's an African saying, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt, right? So it's a very funny thing that really humored me when I first heard her saying this in one of the talk shows she had done. I was listening to that. And the thing is, when you look at, remember I said the 4 A's, my checkpoints, my success markers, awareness, all of that. So really, I had defined by that point when I embarked and came up with my action plan and took action, when I went into the A of action, that this is my vision, this is my action, this is me taking action, This is what I stand for. This is what I stand behind. There's no U-turn for me. There's no going back. It's a legacy. It's a global thing. So because I put myself in the line of fire, I launched it at the Global Women Economic Forum. And then obviously I took action and I went ahead. Now, the minute you define something so powerful for yourself, the minute, ladies, you define this vision and you start working on it, when you announce it, you know the why, then the how is something you can't make excuses for. So coming back to Maya Angelou's quote, I knew I had to walk the talk. So what happened? I started to ask myself some powerful questions. Every time I hit a sort of a crosswind or some pirates came to capsize my ship of ambition, I said, no, Senela, remember Maya Angelou's quote. Nobody is going to buy into your vision. Nobody is going to support your vision, these global partners, cross-cultural projects you're working on, if you're a naked person offering a shirt. So I had to walk the talk. So really my remedy has been just putting myself in the cross line of fire. And a very quick most recent incident of another pivot that I did most recently was when I invited Forbes Riley. I don't know how many of you know who Forbes Riley is. You can Google her. They call her the female version of Tony Robbins. She doesn't like to be called that, but she's an incredible individual. And she's known as the global queen of pitching, Forbes Riley. So I invited her, interviewed her on my stage, 1 Million Women in Power. And it was all about pitching, right? An audience of over 100 plus people. I put myself in the line of fire and I thought, hey, I'm just going to interview this lady. Everything's going to be smooth. And I also prepared a bunch of questions I wanted to ask her. Oh my Lord, guess what she did? Now I'm the CEO of this stage. I've invited my guest, the one and only Forbes Riley. She comes and puts me on the line of fire. She said, Senela, you're talking about pitching? Let's hear your pitch. Go. Ladies, swallowed spit, heart pumping fast, blood, I couldn't breathe, forgot my mother's name, forgot my own name, forgot if I was married. Everything turned white. I was like, Senela, you have a room packed with over 100 people, and this is your platform. What are you going to do? This happened last week. What did I do, ladies? I had massive fear. I put myself in the line of fire. And she said, Senela, go. I went, I pitched. You know what she did? She said, Senela, no. That's not going to work. That's not how you do it. I felt so, if it was you in the line of fire, it's like 1,000 bullets coming at you with no armor. That's what happened to me. I was so embarrassed. But guess what I did? She said, Senela, are you ready? I said, yes, try me. She said, go again. Okay. I was now panicking. Guess what? Put myself in the line of fire. Right? Think about the Maya Angelou quote. I did it for the vision, did it for what I believe in, did it for the rest of the people in the room, put myself in there. And I kept pitching, making a massive fool of myself until I got Forbes Riley to say yes to me. And guess what happened after 3 iterations? Forbes Riley said yes. She said, Senela, you have me. In front of this audience, guess what do you think happened? Me taking that risk. Talk about risk. What happened? I advocate for so many things, behavior stuff, but more than anything else, all those 100 plus people who attended that day automatically were exposed to my pitch. And guess what happened? They subscribed. They came into my network. Can you imagine the impact in putting yourself out there, taking that risk? Because you'll never know how far you can expand, how far you can go. And I love the analogy of the rubber band. I don't have a rubber band on me right now, but it's like a rubber band. You stretch that band and you'd never know how much you can stretch it until you do. And when you stretch that elastic band, try it and you let it loose. What happens? Will it ever go back to the original shape? No, it always expands. So that is my guarantee to you. But what has really worked for me is loving myself, to put myself out there in the line of fire because I know the why. I have clarity about the why. Why? I gave you those 4 checkpoints, the success markers, right? That helped me. And when I cross over to the other side, I speak to myself. Thoughts are not things, remember? I speak to myself and I say, Senela, fear is my friend. Fear is my friend. Fear gives you energy, Senela. And I use that I put myself out there in the line of fire. And it's not about confidence. I'm not always confident, but it's courage because I'm convicted. And then I move forward. But it all starts with those 4 A's I told you. I'll quickly repeat those 4 A's if you want to write it down. Right, the 4 A's: have awareness, attitude check, action plan, and take action. Awareness, attitude check, action plan, and take action. Vani, back to you.
I was trying to type it, but obviously I can't type fast enough. Okay, I'll let someone else do the other.
I'll send you a screenshot.
I was just trying to type it so that everybody else had it. So the 2 takeaways for me from what you just said is walking the talk. That's kind of what you showed there, where, you know, no one's going to follow you unless you walk the talk. And that is, to me, what leadership is, what good attitude is, what the right attitude is. And another perspective on Maya Angelou's quote that you mentioned, the way I also understood it is, if someone without a shirt is offering you a shirt, in other words, they're criticizing without foundation or, you know, the right to criticize. And I think I've seen that running around Facebook with other quotes where, you know, criticism is easy, and most often the people who criticize are the people who've done less or achieved less than you. So you do need to know what feedback you take. Asking for feedback and being comfortable asking for it is important, but that doesn't mean you open the door to take all of it in. You pick what will serve you, that would improve what you're working on, and throw away the rest. Close the door and close the door on the rest. Thank you so much. And I love your energy, Senela. It's a lot of energy, and I thank you for that. So I'm just going to ask one more question before we maybe open out the conversation and everybody can kind of start a discussion, I'm going to say, if you have questions. The inner critique, I know you talked about it. You did talk a lot about the inner critique that we all have. The one aspect I think I'd like to bring in here before I ask you the question is silencing the inner critique is one aspect. In other words, you're confident, you know the plan, you're going to keep driving till you get it. The other aspect that I think is worth thinking about is using that criticism, using that self-doubt to just improve and continue to get it better. Because, you know, having that feedback, getting all that, you know, questions is not a bad thing if you take it in the right spirit. And I think that's what we need to be strong about, because sometimes what happens is we believe all of that and it kind of, you know, kills you. And because of that, I don't know, I'm somebody who doesn't say, I don't shut myself out to what people are saying, but I'm also mindful that I will take it, think about it, and decide what we take and what we don't need or what you shelve. You know, because sometimes some things are valuable today, some later. And I'm talking about a bit more of a tempered approach. I agree, but I think why I'm putting this point out there also is that different personalities, different ways, and all of these ways are okay as long as you don't let yourself down. So that was just a point that I wanted to leave everybody with. When it comes to that inner critique, I know you talked about it, but what is your view? Silence it altogether? Work with it? What would you say?
So it's really interesting, Vani, because I spend, you know, I need to spend more time on this, but, you know, they talk about the whole inner child, right? You talk about inner critique. If you talk about healing that inner child, because inner critique, you go to the root cause. I'm somebody who believes in going to the root cause and plucking it out, not putting a Band-Aid. A lot of adults, we live around with a plaster on things, but going to the root cause. So inner critique is stemming from this whole notion of unloved, misunderstood inner child. So I'm not an expert that can speak inner child, but I have done somewhat of research. And the interesting thing, I'll just quickly pull it out here, one of my research pieces, because this is something I really enjoy. I'm a huge believer in researching, and something I remember about the inner child, because the inner critic is not all bad. The inner critic, how I see it, Pani, is my innate self-defense mechanism, which gets activated almost on autopilot. And it's telling me something. And it's triggered by my inner child having some childhood-related triggers. And this is something that happens in my adult relationships, you know, and goodness, it can even translate into business, because they say, end of the day, employees don't leave big organizations, they leave horrible bosses. So obviously that statistic goes to prove that we have horrible bosses walking around with inner child issues. But not that any of us are exempted from that. But what I'm trying to say is that go back to your inner child, address that. And there was this interesting psychologist who said, next time you find yourself critiquing yourself, an imposter syndrome specialist I was listening to said, it's not all bad, go back to the root cause. Then another psychologist said, you define the root cause as your inner child. So you have to learn to differentiate. Next time you feel something, you feel vulnerable, and your critique putting you down, your inner critique voice putting you down for whatever reason, go and ask yourself, am I telling myself I feel a certain way? Because emotions tend to be very subjective. That's what the psychologist said. But the minute you're objective, you replace your inner language, your inner self-talk, instead of saying, I feel this crisis is impending. I feel this person will do this step work. I feel. Instead of that language, you replace that self-talk with, I think, I believe. And then you go into the exercise of, but why? And you examine that process. Once again, I'm no expert in inner child healing. But I will say what I do know and realize is inner critiquing is stemming from inner child. So address the inner child. And at a surface level, I will quickly tell you how I manage my inner critique is number one, again, awareness. I'm a massive advocate for self-awareness. That's how I regulate. If I'm not aware and catch myself critiquing myself, remember, thoughts are not things. If I don't catch myself, and if I'm not aware, I can't move to regulating that thought. So I first have awareness and check your vocabulary. I'll ask you, show of hands in the room, because it's a very small audience today right now in the live forum. Tell me, ladies, when was the last time you told yourself something negative in your mind, that you entertained a negative thought? Show of hands. When was the, did any of you have a negative thought today? As recent as today? Just show of hands, a negative thought that entered your mind as recent as today. Exactly, yes, I'm going to raise my hand as well. Hang on, I need to, exactly. I think I celebrated that. I gave myself applause. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, look at that, look around the room. But what is a vocabulary? So after today, maybe a group activity we can do for ourselves, for each other, is go back after this session together where we learn from each other. A take back would be, go into your room, go into your journal, write down what is the language I use to talk to myself. And you know the biggest crisis you'd find? This is not the language you would use to counsel a subordinate, to coach your best friend, to mentor a peer. You dare not talk to somebody else like that, but we speak to ourselves. So go into your vocabulary, and that is where you reprogram your self-critique.
I love that. I think that is so, so true, because how we talk to ourselves is so much harsher than how we talk to everybody else. And why have we become so hard?
I'd be like, yeah. You know, Bani, I'd go for a dinner and I'd be like, oh my God, I ate that horrible meal. It's so greasy. How many calories? I love to count calories. I'd be like, oh, 3,000 calories. I'd in fact exaggerate. It's probably 300, right? And then if a friend said, oh, you know what, Senela, I had this huge meal, I'd be like, oh, you still look so beautiful. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So you can see the contrast.
I think that is definitely a quote that is worth keeping, because I think that, I mean, that's where it starts. We are just so horrible to ourselves. I'm going to stop with my questions to see whether the audience has any questions or thoughts you would like to share. It's a small group. I see Rani nodding her head. Do you have anything to share, Rani? Yeah, you're on mute if you are trying to say something.
Hi, Rani. I love seeing you as always. Sending you a huge hug. Rani is a mentor in our mentor group as well, our global mentor group. Love you, Rani.
Hi. Senela. Thank you, Bani. No, I have no questions from Senela. I've learned so much always.
So does anyone else have any questions at all?
We have a couple of questions, Bani.
Sure. Okay, let me try to get to it. Sorry.
You want me to go or you go?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Nash?
Sure. So the latest one we have, did you practice law of attraction in your journey of self-awareness? What's your take on that? Does it help to change our thought process positively?
Wow, I'm a huge advocate for law of attraction. You know, I love how, I'm going to borrow this from Forbes. She says, dream it, believe it, achieve it. I'm going to borrow that one from her. I absolutely believe in that as well. If you can dream it, and you can't outsource your dreams. So something I actually did a vision board as well. I did a soft version, a soft copy of the vision board, and I've demarcated in my vision board things that really matter to me in my life. You know, we all talk about self-actualization. So for me, it's constantly learning, challenging myself. And then you have the other factors like, you know, it could be the family. And I have a picture, I remember my vision board, of my daughter's arm around me. Of course, it's not her because it's an image. You know how to develop a vision board? Two models, a mom and a child. And in that, the little girl is embracing the mom with the arm around the neck. So my vision board is that specific. Because I really believe in the power of visualization, and that's something I really do a lot in my coaching programs as well. Because if you really can see it in your mind, you can attract it into your world. But the catch-22 is you want to see it in your mind, but you're frustrated and you're anxious whether you're actually going to manifest it. And then, like law of attraction says, you end up blocking that thought. So that's where that the psychology of winning comes into it, and the vibration it holds. So something that I do is, the minute I started to get into that whole psychology behavior of winning, the psychology behind winning, I started to gravitate towards winners globally. I started to gravitate towards energies in the room, at meetings, in the world, that I can, that can build me to the next level. So whether it's a coach or whether it's a mentor that shared that same value in life. So I would say law of attraction, manifestation, visualization, doing a vision board has been immensely pivotal in my own journey. And when you put the vibration out there, calm your mind, whether you do yoga. For me, it's prayer. I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual. I pray a lot. I worship. You know, I sing a lot. I love it. Singing music helps me get my mind into that. I channel my mind so that I'm not ruminating. And you have to do this cleansing of your energy process as often as you can, ladies. I would recommend once a day, but let me tell you, it's not easy. But the whole idea of it, remember I said success is a moving target. Diarizing a day, you check in with yourself for meditation, doing your vision board, doing your visualization, having a coach. I have a coach. I check in with one of my collaborators on another project, one of my partners, my peers. Every Sunday, we check in with each other on what really matters. And that process can really help you immensely, yes. I hope that's answered your question.
There was a few more, right?
Yeah, the next one is, thank you, Senela. What is your advice to a person who is looking to make a change, but may not have the finances, resources to take on a course. What specific...
Natalia, I'm going to take over because we're not hearing you. We're not hearing you.
Go for it. Yeah, my internet is a bit unstable. It just gave me a message.
Yeah, let me repeat that. What is your advice to a person who's looking to make a change but may not have the finances or resources to take on a course? What specific thing would you ask them to try first?
I love that question because you're really talking about my own journey, because I literally did that. I left corporate and multinationals. That was the bulk of my career. And then I completely transitioned into entrepreneurship for something that is so purpose-driven and something I believed in and nobody else did. So it was a huge risk. So what I did was I bootstrapped. I have two companies. I have a global innovation consultancy coaching firm, and I also have Women Empowered Global. So I bootstrapped, but that might not be the case for a lot of people. Maybe you can't afford to bootstrap. I would say you go back to my 4-point checklist, please. First, ladies, if you have the power of clarity, push pause in your mind. If you have the power of clarity, have awareness for what is it you need. What is this course you're talking about? Don't be vague. If you can spell it, you can do it. If you can't define it, there are so many people who come to me, Senela, can you mentor me? What do you want my mentoring on? What do you think I need your mentoring on? I'm sorry, honey, go back. You do the work, come back to me. Be specific. Number one, get clarity about this course you're on. What does it look like? How big is it? Where is it going to land? Is it Jamaica? Is it the Philippines? What is, metaphorically speaking, if you're the captain of your ship, what is your end destination? How do you want it to land? So define, gain awareness. First thing. And to answer your question, a specific thing I would say is this. This is something I help people. I coached a PhD student, a British PhD student, to unblock her mind, unpack her limiting beliefs around procrastination. And I helped her make that transition by this advice. And I'll give you the same thing. What I told her is, the minute you think about something you want to do, it feels so big. It feels like this big fat whale. And you're like in Noah's Ark. It's this big mammoth thing I have to do. I don't want to tackle this. I don't have the money. I don't have the support. I don't have the hours. I have kids to feed. I have this, I have that, I have all these things, right? What I can tell you specifically to do, what can you do today as a first step to take the needle and move it one notch? That's it. I'm not asking you to solve the world. I'm not asking you to earn the money overnight. I'm not asking you to get your first VC or get your first angel investor tomorrow. No. What can you do today? What is the first minuscule step you can take to make a shift to tomorrow? See, a lot of the times the metaphor there is we are in a tunnel in a time when we're making the transition. And we want to see the light, but there's this massive flight of stairs. My thing to you is take the very next step. What can you do today to move the needle? That is going to release that pressure. It's going to give you more energy to say, you know what, this is achievable. But before you get to that action level, gain power of clarity. Define your course. What is it? Feel it, smell it, taste it, and go into it. I hope that answers your question. Did that help?
It helped me. And I think what you're also saying is dig deep and keep questioning the why. Go down to the whys till you totally clearly understand what you're driving towards. There is a question on the bootstrap. Is that you mentioned something about bootstrapping? Not very clear. Yeah. Do you want to explain that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I do a lot of startup mentoring, coaching. I'm a mentor at the Founders Institute as well, and some international incubators. So when we talk about bootstrapping, a typical situation, if you're a startup, if you're new and you have an idea, your pre-seed. You just have an idea. This is what I want to do. I want to have an e-commerce business. I want to sell beads. Right. What is your source of funding? Either you can look at what you have right now in your bank, or some assets or property you can liquidate, you can sell and create some cash, some sense of funding for yourself to embark on your business. So you are bootstrapping. So you as the startup or the entrepreneur are investing, putting into the business, bringing something into the business so that you can kick off, get started. But now that's what I did. I had some, I was able to, I had savings. That's how I bootstrapped. Because remember, I came from the multinational background and all of that. I had a lot of savings. So that's how I bootstrapped my company. Now, what if you can't bootstrap? Typically, what a startup would do is they would do a business plan and they would go to an angel investor. Who is an angel investor? Your immediate kin. It could be your spouse. It could be your best friend. It could be somebody in your immediate known network. These are the two typical options for funding, right? So I bootstrapped. If you can bootstrap, you can do it. Or you can look for an angel investor. So that is your source of funding. These are your options. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, so that is incrementally what do you need to do to get from here to the next step? And there are different ways to do it. It's great. Anything else, ladies? Is it only ladies or do we have gents as well?
There are male allies.
A few males did sign up.
Oh, I love that.
Any other thoughts? I think we are up when it comes to time, but since if anybody has anything else, we're happy to take it on. If not, we can call it a day.
Bani, there's this beautiful Maya Angelou quote. Can I just read it out?
I love her.
Concluding.
Yeah.
Oh my, I really do. Is it that obvious, Bani? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I love how she says, okay, number one, if you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be, ladies. If you always try to just blend in, you will never know how amazing you can be. And finally, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. I love that. And we spoke a lot about, we unpacked that today. We spoke about entitlement. We spoke about, not being expectant. Oh, I expect this. I'm entitled. No, you are your helper. So just wanted to leave those two quotes.
And I think I'm going to focus on one of the things that you said. I know you said a lot of things, but at least towards the end about if you don't like it, change it. I think that's what I'm going to encourage everybody to do, because, in my many years of watching, we're very good at complaining, but we're waiting for somebody else to change it for us. And I think that is a really perfect final ending thought, Senela, that, hey, if you love the world, fine. If you don't, it's part of your responsibility to try and change it in any which way you can. Thank you so very much. And I think you have just set it up for a few more sessions that we can talk about, unpacking different pieces. So we'd love to talk to you again sometime. Thank you so much for joining us today. And hope to see you soon.
Oh, I'd love that, Bani. Virtual coffee coming up, right, Bani? Get ready. So,
wine
I was. That's our secret. We're gonna have some add-ons. We're gonna have some additives. Absolutely.
Thank you.
That
everyone,
was a great session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Bani.
Thank you, Senela. Thank you, Bani, for the lovely session.
Thank you, Bani.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Senela. Love to hear you again.
Everyone. Absolutely. Oh, sweet voice.
So sorry, it's my son.
Oh, cute. My daughter, she's still here. She's at the back.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.